Hi guys, just before we start the episode today, whatever platform you are listening to this on, whether it be on the podcast, Apple Podcast, YouTube, whatever it is, please support it. Please like, subscribe, whatever you can do. We want to reach as many people as possible. So please do that and we'll get right into the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback podcast. Today in this episode, we have Vanessa Bighinatti. Did I get that correct? I did.
Yeah, that was good.
Cool. So just to give you a bit of detail on Vanessa's story before we get into the podcast, Vanessa struggled for years with chronic Lyme disease and a number of co-infections. Due to her extreme symptoms, she was bound to a cane at 24 years old. At her worst, her numerous prescribed antibiotics had destroyed her stomach lining and microbiome. And so she had to turn to a liquid diet for weeks until she was able to handle even just raw vegetables again. But something in her kept fighting. Her goal was to reverse the irreversible symptoms, supposedly irreversible symptoms, and become symptom-free. And fast forward to today, Vanessa is in remission for most of these symptoms, and she continues to heal each and every day, and now dedicates her time to helping others heal through her own website and business, Heal with Ness. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to share my story and give others hope. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, what I tend to do is to go back to the beginning of the story, but a little bit before the beginning of the story. So we could just understand a little bit about what life was like before things started to happen from a health perspective. What was your childhood like? We have two different kinds of guests on this show. We have people who just had problems from birth, and then we have others that were a bit like me who were healthy and then, suddenly came down sick. But then when they actually look back at it, there were things that probably were going on. Which one were you?
Yeah, definitely the latter. As a child, I thought I was really healthy. My family thought I was really healthy. And now looking back at the big picture, I can see that I was actually not healthy at all. And if we connected these dots, I might have, been able to prevent how sick I was or even my illness in the long run. So, as a child, I had ADHD, insomnia. I had lots of joint pain already. And I had a lot of anxiety. So we never really pinpointed it because, I was treated for everything separately. But yeah, I think that we would have been able to put the bigger picture together looking back,
Yeah. Well, it tends to be the frustrating thing with the chronic health issue. And I was doing it when I first started to get a lot of symptoms. You have a problem you have ringing in your ears. So you go see an ear specialist. You have loads of, issues with your vision. So you go and see an eye specialist, and they're all, from an isolated point of view, they're saying there's nothing wrong with that, physically with that part of your body. Is that what you were having when you were growing up? So when you had like joint problems, would you go and see a doctor specifically about that, and they would just say there's nothing really wrong with you?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, and no one was really looking at the big picture. So I would go to physical therapy for my joint pain. And then my primary care doctor was like, oh, well, you have anxiety as well. But, the other guy saying your joints are fine, you're already working on that. And then, I saw another person for my ADHD and then another person for my insomnia when the ADHD was really linked to the insomnia, and the anxiety was linked to the ADHD, but no one connected all the dots because I was seeing everybody, so many different doctors for the specific symptom.
Yeah. And so when you say joint pain, by the way, was it because as a, how young were you when you started to get joint pain? Like very young?
Yeah, I was in middle school, and then in high school, it got worse. And as I slowly got older, it got worse and worse.
Wow. Because that must have been, I'm assuming, like no one around you, none of your peers were, having these kinds of issues. So was that quite concerning, or was it just, being a younger person, you were just kind of like, didn't let it bother you?
Yeah, I think at the time I was just young and I didn't really understand it. So I didn't really put too much thought into it at the time.
Okay. And so could you take us through the first part of the I guess the story where you started to realize something was wrong, and you had to act on it?
Yeah. So in college, that's when I started seeing things decline even more. I was having, these episodes where I would just black out and then come to, and I'd almost pass out on the bus that I was taking to my university. I was having severe chronic sinus infections to the point where my whole face would hurt. I would just have to like lay there with a compress, and I'd be in all this pain, and I was like, I don't know why I feel like this, massive headaches, that kind of stuff. And that was when I was slowly starting to be like, I don't know if this is normal. And then after college, I made a really stressful life transition. I finished my master's. I moved to Boston with no job and signed a lease for an apartment, and I just was very stressed out about the whole situation. And that really was the onset of my worst symptoms. So I think that stress really brought everything to the surface that I was dealing with. And that is when my health started really declining. I started having the whole left side of my body go numb. And I would have these terrible heart palpitations and heart aches. And so I was in and out of the ER because I thought I was having a heart attack. And it was crazy because, they would do all the tests. I'd be like, I literally think I'm having a heart attack. And they'd be like, oh, this is just anxiety. Everything's coming back normal. So you must be fine. So, that was when I was like, okay, well, I know something is not fine. Like something doesn't feel right. And at this point, I was up to about 50 symptoms. And I was like, okay, this is not normal. So, I started going to all these doctors, running all the tests. I was going to the best doctors here in Massachusetts and in Boston, and everything was just coming back normal. I wasn't getting any answers.
Wow. And you've just gone to a new city as well. Did you know anyone there?
I knew a few people, but no one really, really well.
God, so that must have been super scary as well. You're going through this thing. You haven't got any family. Your friends, your support system. Did you feel like that, almost like that must have exacerbated? I know you said that it was the big life change, but the lack of support as well, did that exacerbate things?
I don't know if I would say it exacerbated it, but it definitely played a role. I felt definitely alone. I didn't really have a lot of support. A lot of times when I was going to the ER, I was going by myself. My mom on the phone calling me, asking me if I was okay. She's in another city, and I was just going to do these things by myself. And yeah, it felt really, really lonely. I didn't have anybody who, I was so young too. I was like 23 years old. No one my age was sick, and no one knew what it was like to be in and out of the ER and going to doctor's appointments. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I just was like, I don't know what's happening to me, and just, tried to pave my path through all of this.
Wow. So could you take us through the next part of the story then? So, you're at this stage where, you've got 50 symptoms. They're telling you there's nothing going wrong. What did you do next?
Yeah, at that point, I knew something was wrong in my body. I was like, this is more than anxiety. So, I was lucky enough to have someone in my life say, this sounds a lot like Lyme disease. And that was when I started, doing a little bit more research into it and being like, what is that? What does that mean? And, I found a specialist that was pretty close to here. I actually still had to drive over an hour to go see them. And by some miracle, I had gotten in. They had a 6-month wait list, and by miracle, I always say, I ended up getting someone's canceled appointment like a few days later. And when I got in, I mean, I feel incredibly blessed and lucky because most people on this journey struggle for years trying to find answers. And I was lucky to have someone, kind of plant the seed for me.
Mm.
So as soon as I saw this doctor, she immediately said I had chronic Lyme disease, Bartonella, Babesia. She was like, you're dealing with mold, you're dealing with parasites, you have SIBO, you have POTS, you have anxiety. She just gave me an entire laundry list of illnesses. And that was such a pivotal moment for me. I was so happy that someone believed me and I had some sort of answer, but then I had no idea what that entailed. And you were telling me about your story, which was very similar to my story. I was like such a party animal. I was going to the gym 7 days a week. I was just like living life on the edge and, pushing myself too hard. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, great. I'm just going to take these pills and then I'm going to be all better and just get back to my life,
Yeah.
which was not the case.
Yeah. So, and because did you come from like myself, like I come from a very like traditional medical family. Like if they really trust the local doctor. Like if you're sick, yeah, just like you say, you take a pill and you get better. So was that was what you were expecting, to get were you expecting to get antibiotics and they could get rid of it?
Yeah. I have my mom's in healthcare and we're very traditional medicine and, like antibiotics was how you just fix everything and go about your day. So I was like, okay, great. I'll just take a few antibiotics, probably like 30 days. All my symptoms will be gone. I'll just get back to life and, I'll just continue living exactly how I was living.
Yeah. Well, at that age as well, because I mean, I was just the same. I mean, I was a little bit older when it kind of got worse, but I just immediately just yearned for that old life that I had. And to be able to I just thought within 3 months of me getting this treatment, like I did antibiotics as well, I'll just be able to go back and I'll be going out and I'll be able to party. I'll be able to do all of that. And then you realize this is something that's a little bit more deep rooted. For you, obviously, because you'd had these symptoms for a young age, do you think that you probably contracted Lyme or whatever it was that was the main culprit actually a lot earlier in your life, and then it was just a case of everything just built up over time?
Yeah, I do. I definitely think elementary school or middle school was where, that's really where it all started. And it was more dormant and showing up in smaller symptoms until my body just couldn't handle it anymore after that stressful situation. It kind of just took over.
And is it, because I hear conflicting things from different people, because I think it's almost like it got to the point where Lyme is to blame for everything, but then people often have a lot of other things as well, like yourself, and it's more a case of actually, if you just look at it as a systemic problem, that there's something wrong with the body as a whole. Because there might, I imagine maybe one of your siblings, for example, may have, or sort of a friend of yours could have contracted it at the same time, but their immune system was actually strong enough to deal with it. Was the person you were dealing with at that point, were they looking at you as a whole, or are they just going after the Lyme?
A little bit of both, right? She really specialized in Lyme, but like I said, I had EBV as well. I had other gut issues, so she knew about those, but wasn't necessarily addressing them. And, I like to now, where I'm at now, I like to look at it as dis-ease of the body rather than disease, right? Like it's just dis-ease of the body. So, just addressing the root cause is the main culprit. So, right. And a lot of times that's viral and bacterial, so knowing that, if I knew that back then, I think it would have been so much more helpful. I would have healed so much faster.
Yeah.
So that's how I like to look at it now.
Yeah. And so I mean, I described in the introduction around the antibiotic side of things and what that did to you. Was that the next step that you did? You went to antibiotics immediately, and could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this doctor that I was seeing she happened to be a naturopathic doctor who did both herbals and antibiotics. And we went the antibiotic route because that was just what I was used to in my lifestyle. And the antibiotics I was put on were extremely aggressive antibiotics, way too much for my body to handle. She probably gave me antibiotics for someone who was like 6 feet tall, whereas I'm only 5 feet tall. So, it was very, very strong. So I went on this very aggressive treatment right off the bat for 5 months straight. And yeah. And that just completely destroyed me. And I honestly believe that the antibiotics made everything worse. So I think that the antibiotics were just too strong. They were destroying me. And I was having, the antibiotics are when I had to start using the cane because they were really just destroying my system. So after about 5 months, that got to the point where my stomach couldn't even handle them anymore. I couldn't eat. I remember this one week where I hadn't eaten for 3 days. I couldn't get anything down because anything I put in my body caused me so much pain because of how raw my stomach was from the antibiotics. So but I refused to stop taking the antibiotics. So I'm like taking these antibiotics and then haven't eaten for 3 days. I lost over 20 pounds, which I did not have to lose. So I was like 85, 90 pounds and just could barely function. I was basically bedridden. And my parents had to drive 3 hours to come get me and then drive me to this doctor. And we were all in the car, absolutely silent, because all three of us didn't think I was going to live past that point.
Oh my God, 5 months. That's insane. Was that IV antibiotics or just oral?
No, they were oral.
Okay. Yeah, God. Was there, so so when you got to that point where what was it that hospital trip that was just like, I'm done now, or like what caused you to stop taking them?
Yeah, the doctor that I was seeing, we decided to stop taking them and give my body a little bit of a break because of how weak I physically was. And I couldn't get anything in my system. At that point, I was like drinking, those protein shakes just to even get something down. So we made the decision to stop the antibiotic and give my body a little bit of a break. So I actually went back to my parents' house where they took care of me for a few weeks until I gained a little bit of strength back. And I ended up switching doctors at that point. I wasn't feeling heard. I felt like the treatment was too aggressive. So I ended up switching doctors. And I ended up back on antibiotics, unfortunately. So I ended up doing a pulse method, which is you take the antibiotic for 2 weeks and then you stop it for 2 weeks and then you take it for 2 weeks again. And I did that for way too long again. But at that time, I started working with a nutritionist and I started adding other tools to my toolbox, is what I like to call it. So that was when I finally realized the antibiotic is not going to be my end all save all, right? It wasn't going to save me. So that was when I started seeing the nutritionist. I started going to massage therapy. I started really working on proper detox methods. And that was also when I really started getting into mindset work. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
Okay. I saw your smile. So yes.
For anyone who listens to this, there would probably be. I went to like an advanced workshop of his earlier on this year.
Awesome.
So yeah, I for anyone who's listening to this, they would have heard me talk about him a number of times. So yeah, no, to talk. If you could tell us a little bit more about that as well, that'd be really interesting.
All the holistic stuff I started doing, or the Dr. Joe Dispenza part?
Just a bit, about the mindset stuff as well. But yeah, the holistic stuff in general, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that was at the point where I really started dipping my toe into holistic and alternative medicine and, saw this whole other world. I was like, what is this? Like, this is so new and exciting. And I really just deep dove into it. I was so curious about how the body works and how food is medicine. And, I think the really big thing I noticed was I cut out gluten for a week. And I didn't need my cane for that entire week. And that was the moment I was like, oh my God, what I'm eating is truly affecting me. And that was, kind of where I started learning all the holistic and alternative stuff, which was really, really great. And, when I was at that very low point of, so sick, my parents are taking care of me, I really kind of made a pact with myself. I said, you know what? I need to see improvements in the next 3 months. Or I don't want to live this way. And I was determined. So I started doing everything. Someone told me to start writing gratitudes every day. And that was really where the mindset stuff took off. I was like, all right, well, I'm not really that grateful for much at the moment. She's like, it doesn't matter. Just write down 3 things you're grateful for. So, it was things as simple as like, I pet a really cute dog today. Or, I went for a walk and I felt the sunshine on my body. It was these small things. And I immediately noticed how it started uplifting my mood and just making me see some good in every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was really powerful. I also watched the documentary Heal. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that also really hit home for me. I was like, wow, I keep telling myself and everybody else that I'm sick and how sick I am and how things have been so bad for so long and I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. So it really registered to me that if I keep telling myself I'm sick, my body's going to hear that and that's how my body's going to treat me.
Mm.
So I started just making really subtle tweaks to, my own thoughts and how I was speaking to others. So, someone would be like, how are you doing? Which is like a question everybody gets when they're really unwell and you're like, oh, still terrible. But
Yeah.
instead I was like, my body is healing. My body's working on healing itself. And my body's supporting me every day. And, I just say these like subtle things that had more of a positive spin on it. And it just made the biggest difference in my healing.
That's sorry to interrupt you. That's really interesting. That is because I hate it when someone says to me, how are you doing? Like, how's your health? Because I don't want to, I completely agree with you. I realized a few years ago that I don't get anything out of venting about it and moaning, I'd say moaning, but yeah, moaning about it. And I realized that I wanted to stop doing that. So I'm not denying that there's something going on, but then when someone asks me, I find it really, I just get really awkward. And like, I end up saying, yeah, probably quite a negative thing, but that's really interesting that you said that, like, no, I'm healing each day. I think that's really, because that's exactly what you are doing, and you're not lying. Because I think I got to the point where I was going, yeah, no, I'm good. And I was like, I'm like, then I was beating myself up because I'm like, I'm lying really, because I'm not good. So yes, that's it. Did you initially, was there ever a thought to say, oh no, I am good, but then you thought, no, actually I need to have something where I actually truly believe it?
Um, I'm just like honestly blunt in everything I say and do. So I never was like, I'm good. My thing would have been like, I'm doing all right, or I'm okay. A
Yeah.
lot of times I know, obviously when you're not well and you want to be truthful, I would say like, yeah, the last couple of days have been challenging. I would use that word challenging rather than the bad or something like that. And be
Yeah.
like, yeah, the last couple of days have been challenging, but I really trust that my body is healing and knows what it's doing based on the improvements I've seen over the last couple of months. And,
Yeah.
each day is a new challenge, but I'm getting through it. And I think just the way I worded it was really helpful. And I also used to try not to identify with the word sick. So
Mm.
I would never tell people I was sick. I would say like, I'm unwell, or I'm working on healing. And I think that was really, I was reprogramming my subconscious to not identify as a sick person,
Mm.
because I felt like that was keeping me stuck in my illness.
Mm. So you were doing, because we've talked a lot about it on this podcast recently, and something I'm trying to deep dive into is like the brain retraining, and that side of things. Did you didn't do a particular course of brain retraining, then you were kind of like almost doing your own brain retraining by the sounds of things?
Yeah, exactly. No, I never went through like a full-on course for
Mm.
that. But, after learning a lot about mindset, just from reading, I really self-studied a lot of like Joe Dispenza and, other people who are really into mindset. A really big key takeaway for me was also joy. Really focusing on feeling joy. I'm sure you've heard, since you've been to Joe Dispenza's retreat, about feeling it to heal it, right? So you really need to feel the emotion to work through it and reprogram it. So, at that point, I had lost basically everything I really enjoyed in life, all my friends, all the hobbies I used to do, I was like not well enough to do those. So I started making a list of what now brought me joy, like in that moment. So I had a whole list. I still have it on my phone actually, of everything that I love doing. I was like, I love the leaves in the fall. I love, you know, coloring. I like to knit. I like to read books. And, you know, I tried to pick one thing off that list every day that brought me joy so I could tap into that emotion. Because the more I felt joy, the more I felt like my nervous system was relaxing, or I was able to see the positives and to rewire my brain for, you know, the positive outcome that I was looking to get.
Mm. And how did you, because I'm personally very interested in it, how did you get into hear about Joe Dispenza, and how do you implement, like, do you still, like, do you do his meditations? Is that something you do, or you did on a daily basis?
So I learned about Joe Dispenza through Hay House and Heal, the documentary.
Yeah.
I saw that documentary, and then I started getting really into all the Hay House books. Well, a lot of them, you know, they have a ton that they have published. So yeah, you know, I haven't done a lot of his meditations. I just started recently getting into more of his meditations, but I was really focused on the affirmations and the journaling and the gratitude. You know, that was really where I started off in my journey. I wasn't at a place where I could really meditate for a long time based on my symptoms.
Yeah.
But meditation is really key in my healing journey. You know, yoga and meditation was something I try to incorporate weekly for sure.
And a lot of that's like calming the nervous system down and getting you to a state where you're not like, you're not in fight or flight consistently, I imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. So when your body's not in fight and flight consistently, you can actually heal, right? When you're in that fight or flight mode, your immune system's depressed. So getting to that point of feeling safe was really key in my journey. Like, I tried to make sure I felt safe in almost everything I did.
That's really interesting. Now, people don't, did you like naturally start to, it feels like you've naturally kind of like gone into a lot of these different areas, and did you have anyone guide you at the beginning of this, or is it just you kind of, it was a bit like an onion, you know, once you started to like pick back the layers, you just went to town?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very spiritual, so I feel like everything has come into my life at the perfect timing and divine timing, and really has fallen into my lap. You know, like, I actually saw a medium when I was really sick because I wasn't getting any answers from doctors. So I saw a medium, and she was the one that told me that I needed to start changing my diet. So then I hired a nutritionist. And then, you know, she was like, don't forget to properly detox. So I started, you know, then going to massage therapy and doing saunas and doing yoga. And, each thing just kind of spiraled onto the next. And then I heard someone talk about the documentary Heal, so everything just fell into place for me.
You followed the signs of the universe.
I did. You know, when I was so sick, I was at the point where I was like literally just praying to God because I just didn't know what else to do. And that really is where I developed being spiritual again. And I was like, literally felt like I was at rock bottom. I remember it was like 4 a.m. I hadn't eaten in 3 days. I was like, literally, if you just point me in the direction, I will do it. And then I will pray every day. I will do whatever I need to do. And I feel like my prayers were answered, you know?
So I guess just putting everything into perspective in terms of timelines. So you were 23 when this first started, like, being really bad. How many years after was it before you started to make these like realizations and then start to actually make some kind of improvement?
Yeah, I think it took me about 8 months before I saw the slightest improvement. I was getting worse for about 8 months. And then I started seeing some improvements. And then it took me, I don't really like to use the word remission anymore, but, you know, I reached remission after 2 years on treatment. But, you know, I think healing is a ever continuing thing. So even after I technically reached remission, I still had symptoms. I probably would say I was only like 75% better. And that was when my doctor was like, well, you're 75% better. This is about all we can hope for. and you could just maintain this and you'll be doing really great. And, I had made that promise to myself. I was like, no, no, I'm going to be symptom free. So, that was kind of when I started doing my own healing for myself. I started researching herbs. I started, just literally using food as medicine. Like I started treating the symptoms I still had based on food, like using food. And now I've been doing that for 3.5 years. And I can say that I have healed even more, like significantly more than I ever thought. I resonate with being about 95% better. I feel like I've almost eradicated everything. And I don't even associate with being an unwell person anymore.
And I talk about this quite a lot on the podcast, because for me, I don't want to just, as you said, I don't want to just go into remission and just have I don't want to feel like I did before. I want to feel better than that. And I want to actually have like almost like optimize my health. I want to feel health that like normal people don't necessarily do. Is that a goal of yours? Do you kind of just, as you say, the kind of healing journey never really ends because you're still kind of striving for something more? Is that the way you think about it as well, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm a life student. I continue to learn more and more about mindset work and nutrition every day. Like I really believe, like you said, healing is continuous. Like my lifestyle now, if someone who eats a standard American diet or lives the standard American way saw my lifestyle, they would say it's extreme. Yeah. But for me, health is wealth. It's the biggest form of wealth you can have. So this is a lifestyle it's not worth sacrificing to me. So, I eat very, very clean every day. I use food as medicine. I literally buy herbs based on how I'm feeling that week and use that to make sure I stay healthy and boost my immune system. So yeah, this is a lifestyle for me now.
Wow. And so I guess comparing to how you were before, you mentioned, you're a bit of a partier, that side of things, life's changed for you a lot then, you kind of like, I know at the core you're the same person, but in a lot of ways, are you a different person now?
Yes. I like to think of it like a butterfly, right? So the butterfly is this caterpillar at first, right? And I like to think I was in my caterpillar phase when I was, doing all that partying and stuff like that. At that point, I was really numbing myself. Why was I drinking so much? Why was I partying? Why was I, doing everything I was doing? Because I wasn't happy and I didn't know who I was at the core of my being. And when I was sick, I resonate with that being the cocoon phase. I really lost everything that I was doing then, and I turned inward and I focused on myself and my healing. And now that I'm healed, I resonate as being the butterfly now, because this is who I've always been meant to be. I found my true self and I'm happier and healthier than I've ever been. So yeah, my lifestyle looks so different than what I did before. This year is going to be 5 or 6 years since I've had an alcoholic drink.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually this week is my 5-year anniversary of no longer needing my cane.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is such a big deal because now I hike 4,000-foot mountains. I ski regularly. I mountain bike. I'm doing all these things that I never did before, but that bring me so much joy now. So even though life looks so different, I've never been happier.
That's awesome. And I guess just I like to touch upon like relationships as well. Like, I mean, as in like friendships and family and stuff like that. Chronic health has like a big impact on these kinds of things, particularly like in your situation and in a lot of people's situation. They're used to living a certain lifestyle beforehand, relating to people in a certain way, and then suddenly when this chronic health issue hits, that's not possible anymore in a lot of cases. How did you find it like hurt your or affected your relationships? Obviously you just moved to a new city, so maybe it was a bit different for you, but could you give us a little bit of detail on that?
Yeah, it was really, really hard for me. Like so many people who deal with this, no matter what age you're at, I was 23, 24 years old. So the people I knew here at the city, these were my friends that I used to go to the bar with, or, you go to the gym with, we didn't really do much else besides those activities. So when I got sick and I was like, I really can barely leave the house. Like I can maybe get lunch, you can come by and see how I'm doing, or you know, they just couldn't handle that. And I don't blame them looking back, at 23 or 24 years old, not many people have the emotional maturity to understand what I went through. I mean, I didn't in the beginning, it matured me so much. So I really lost pretty much everybody I was friends with at the time. And, a lot of my family, immediate family understood and was very supportive of me, but my extended family, wasn't really there for me either. So it was hard. I really felt like I lost a lot during that time, because I also lost a lot of my hobbies as well. And then, the more I became myself and practiced self-love and became my own best friend, I drew in more people who were accepting of what I was going through and what my lifestyle looked like. So now I have amazing friends who never make me feel guilty for, being vegan or not wanting to eat a certain meal or living the lifestyle I live. And now my family understands because they saw what I went through. So they know that this lifestyle keeps me healthy. So they're so supportive.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think it kind of, what it does for you though, yeah, that chronic health, it kind of will highlight who's important in your life and who's the people who's good, who should have stick around. But yeah, it's a difficult one. But yeah, you're in a far better position now, and I imagine the people who are in your life right now, you have a lot more shared interests, shared activities and stuff you can do, and that's only better for you and your health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think a major thing that I realized when I, was losing friends and trying to, pave my way and stuff like that was being unapologetically myself. I was like, this is my lifestyle and either it works for you or it doesn't. And if it works for you, then we can be friends, and just like from the get-go, just being like, oh, like someone was having a dinner party, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to bring my own food because I need to stick with this because it's best for my healing. And, just not even saying sorry for that. I noticed that a lot of people will be like, hey, I'm sorry, I got this diet that I'm on. So is it okay if I bring my own food? Like, no, I'm just going to bring my own food and it's going to work out great. And we're going to still have a great time.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because there is an element of you do. I still feel awkward around like people, and you do potentially apologize, and yeah, that's definitely something you shouldn't do. Going back to kind of like I guess the most difficult parts of your story, something you said was like, when you've done all that damage to your body through the antibiotics, mentally that must have been so difficult, because I don't know, from my perspective, when I'm thinking about it and how my mindset would have been at the time, and actually what I thought about when I was on antibiotics was, I've had this thing like the Lyme and mold and stuff going on. That's already been doing a lot of damage. Then I've got all of these antibiotics that's causing damage. Is this irreversible? How I'm in such a mess now. Everything's so complex. How do I get out of it? Were you having like similar thoughts like that? Like, was that when you were at your lowest, when you were talking about there?
Yeah, I was definitely for sure at my lowest then. When I had 50 symptoms, I was taking 56 pills a day. Yeah, that was like an all-time low for sure.
Medical, or was that
it was supplements and antibiotics. So
okay, wow.
I was on so many supplements because the antibiotics were doing so much damage. I was just trying to even balance it out. Looking back, if I had to do this whole journey all over again, I would have just did the herbal treatment and focused on diet and lifestyle changes if I had to do it all over again. Because I can't say that I know if the antibiotics did anything because I was so damaged by them. Um, so yeah, that was definitely an all-time low. And I found it really hard. I saw no light at the end of the tunnel, and everything felt so overwhelming, right? Because basically when you have a chronic illness, it's a full-time job. You're like, all right, what am I eating? What time am I taking my pills? Did I take all my pills today? Did I get some sunshine? Am I detoxing properly? It is a full-time job, and I was so overwhelmed. And at one point I was like, I need to just do what I'm doing in this moment is the best that I can do. And I just need to focus on that. And I need to have more compassion for myself because I'm going through some serious hard stuff. And that was kind of where I was like, you know what, I'm just doing my best. So I just started focusing on the small steps and the small things instead of the big picture, because that was where it felt overwhelming. And just focusing on those small steps every day, that really helped me get out of that like dark place.
Yeah. I think it can be so when you get so overwhelmed by like what we're going through that you just don't do anything. And that you're like, and I've had periods of time like this, but I've had periods of times where I'm trying to do everything all at once. And then I'm like, oh no, I get so overwhelmed that I just won't do anything for like a month. Whereas actually, if I was just doing a little bit every day, that would add up.
Yeah, I think that fatigue around being ill or like burnout around having a chronic illness is so real. Cause like, my morning routine looks like making a lemon water, then juicing something, then making a smoothie, and then taking all my supplements. And then I need to make a big salad for lunch. And then I need to have a snack. And then I need to do this. Then did I meditate today? Being so regimented gets so like the burnout is there. So yeah, I used to find myself really beating myself up if I didn't do all those things. And whenever I felt like I actually learned this recently, wish I learned it back then. But, whenever I felt that burnout coming on, I just got back to the basics. Like, I'm like, I don't need to meditate every day. I'll just do one thing that brings me joy instead. I don't need to make a juice and a smoothie. Let me do one that feels better for me today. And I just got back to the basics and of what made me feel the best instead of burning myself out.
What would be your advice to someone who's in the depths of where you were at that time, where you were kind of, I think you said 3 days you hadn't eaten and you were really at the bottom of where you were. What would be your advice to someone in a similar situation right now in order for them to to keep going and moving forward?
Yeah, where can I start? I have a whole list, right? I think so. A few of the biggest things for me, advice-wise, that really, really resonated. The biggest thing for me was food is medicine. Like what you are putting in your body is either fighting or feeding your illness, no matter what you're dealing with. So focusing on that was very much key for me. And also having compassion for yourself. I feel like so many of us don't take the time to just acknowledge what we're going through is so difficult. And the fact that we're pushing every day to get better and to stay motivated and to get through it, and not just taking a moment and saying, you know what, I hold space for myself and I have a lot of compassion for myself for going through this, because this is not an easy journey. A lot of people in your life, can't even imagine what you're going through. So just to remember that you're doing the best you can each day.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can just beat yourself up so much about when you're not seeing those results, or you do slip up or something like that. No, I think that's great advice. Looking back on like how your life is now and how it could have been, we talked about how you're a different person now. What are the ways in which your life is better as a result of like what you've been through, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I feel so incredibly blessed to be healthy, to be alive. My illness really made me appreciate life and what life has to offer and how much more there is to life than what we're told, right? And I've just, like I said, truly come to appreciate what I have now, you know, and I really found myself in this process, and I found my purpose in this process. And I think that if I didn't go through what I went through, I wouldn't have the tools and the knowledge and the empathy for other people going through this and for finding my purpose, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you do. You have a different gratitude for, I know, well, I certainly know when I get to the position I need to be, like yeah, I'll feel super grateful for everything that kind of, I guess, normal people would take for granted.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I'm sure there'll be so many people who have, you know, maybe want to reach out to you or maybe ask you a few questions. Is that okay for them to do that? And if so, how would they do that? What's the best way of them connecting with you?
Yeah. Anybody is welcome to reach out to me. You can message me on Instagram at Healing with Ness. It's Healing W period Ness.
Yeah.
And that's my Instagram name. And, or you can email me at healingwithness@gmail.com.
Awesome. Cool. We'll include all of that in the show notes. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. You know, always helps me, these stories do, but your stories definitely helped me today and given me some extra motivation for my own healing journey, and I'm sure it will do for everyone listening.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.